Alright, in this segment I'm going to deal with the characters, or more accurately, the lack of the use of the characters. I'm going to specifically focus on Finn, Poe, Rose. I should note my preferences first of all. I do prefer Poe slightly over Rose, and Rose over Finn. I understand Rose is very problematic for a lot of people, but that's a separate controversy, and I'll deal with that in some Last Jedi videos. Alright, starting with Finn, I think for most people, if they had been keeping up with what was going on with The Force Awakens, it's very strongly implied that he's Force sensitive and that he should become a Jedi Knight in the new movie. And again, after Ryan took over, he is heroic, but he's not a Jedi Knight. And when you see the film, there's this refrain that keeps occurring where he's going to, quote, tell Rey something, like, Rey, I have to tell you something, over and over again. And a lot of fans were like, oh, well, this must be a romantic tie-in. But no, JJ confirmed that it was a Force sensitivity. That's what's going on. But the film never explicitly spells it out. So this is from Mashable. This is the director. Okay. Even during the Q&A following the screening, he said, this is JJ, it privately to at least one unnamed attendee afterwards, and he was careful to qualify it. That's what he thought Finn was going to say, but hey guys, it's not canon or anything. And then somebody tweeted, it has come to my attention that I may have not worded my post as accurate as I could have. JJ sent it meant to him that he wanted to tell Rey he was Force sensitive. This is Finn. But personally left it open-ended, which is even worse. If he's the director and that's how he feels, why not do it? Again, this is speculative. I think what this points to is the issue of race, which does come up, that Finn's role was pretty diminished because they were worried about the Chinese box office. Again, consistently, he's not featured as largely or strongly. I think because of fear of a Chinese box office that they're going to lose money. But again, it just is a separate issue. Yeah, he was supposed to be Force sensitive, and it was supposed to be very explicit. Now, they give him a lot to do. In fact, they give him a love interest with Jannah, but it's pretty thin. It's just like, oh, she's the next stormtrooper, and he's the next stormtrooper. But even that doesn't make sense, because she says, well, you inspired me, but this is a universe where nobody seems to know Luke Skywalker, but they know him. So it's just strange. I mean, it's good that they gave him something, but it doesn't match with what we know in TFA, and it's kind of substituting with just making him a kind of full-blown Jedi. So yeah, it's very disappointing. Now, moving into Poe, Oscar Isaac has been explicit. He really doesn't want to work with Disney again. And there's several reasons. Apparently, he did want to explore a kind of homosexual relationship with Finn, and, Disney was not agreeing to that. There were also some other scenes that were filmed that were cut. Anthony Daniels in his memoir mentions that 3CPO and Finn had he and Poe had a very emotional scene, and ultimately that was cut out. That was not shown. And if you see the film, you're going to see he has a thing with Zori Bliss, who's this kind of smuggler from his past. I'm not going to go as far as Jenny. She alleges that there's kind of a racism in there as well with Finn. Like, oh, they're giving him this Hispanic character, this kind of dark criminal past. I don't read it as racist, at least not outright, but it is kind of weird. I think the problem was that they thought he was becoming too generically just like another Han Solo. So they wanted more to differentiate him, and they gave him a love interest who was clearly saying he's heterosexual and, not giving any implication that he's homosexual and this kind of thing. And I think, okay, that's fine if that's what you think the character should be, but again, both he and Finn don't really do much. I mean, they are with Rey during the first part of the so-called fetch quest, but, again, Rey just goes off on her own and, fights Kylo and then fights Palpatine, and they're sort of just left to gather some people and they'll, just show up at the end. So there's really not much more for them. But I think what happens with Rose is sort of a way worse. And more difficult to understand because, again, the version we see, she's in there for only 70 seconds, and it's pretty stunning. I mean, It's one thing if they didn't like what the Ryan did with Rose, and they're like, okay, we don't want to do that again. That's fine. You don't want to use Rose, that's fine. But again, apparently they did have a couple of Rose Ray scenes, and they just chose not to use them. So this is Kelly talking about this. This is on IndieWire. I think it's really cool at all that they are even in scenes together. This is her and Ray as the characters. Because in Jedi, we weren't in any scenes together. Tran says, "It was really cool to have feminine energy on the set. I wish I could tell you more, but I'm really excited for people to see, quote, Rose and Ray interact. They both have the same objective, which is to fight for the things you believe in and the people you love." So the cast saw an early cut in early December. And I guess at that point she still thought, oh, they still have a lot of my scenes. But then when they showed up at the world premiere, the scenes were completely gone. So she's in there just over a minute. I mean, you really could just go to the bathroom, come back, and totally miss her. She does show up a little bit at the end, but even trying to analyze her character is pretty difficult. I mean, she does do some things with Bilbo, but it's just so small. It's like The Last Jedi gave us a really full, if flawed character, and good setup. And if you go with the Colin Trevorrow script, he was going to do a lot of things with Rose, and yeah, it's just shocking that they just don't do anything. It's like she doesn't even exist anymore. And finally, with the lesbian kiss, it's really strange because, as far as I understand, with the Chinese market, they didn't censor it, but for some of the smaller markets, they did. And at this point, I will defend JJ because people were, well, yeah, there's that quote-unquote lesbian kiss, but it's in the background. It's by characters we don't know. No, those characters had speaking roles. I mean, I know one of them was in The Last Jedi, and she did have a speaking role. So they're not quote-unquote minor characters. They're there. Again, I can understand like how, a lot of critics don't know Star Wars, don't care about it. So they're like, yeah, she doesn't really exist. No, they exist. They were there. Again, obviously they could have done more. They could have, not censored the scene in certain places, but they did do the scene, and, it's very small, but at least it's something. So again, this is the whole problem with Skywalker. It just seems to try to appeal to so many and so many contradictory audiences. It lacks many characters. I mean, Kylo and Rey are really the only central characters that do a lot, and sort of what they're going through, their emotions, their state of mind. With Finn, Poe, and Rose, you're pretty much like they're just turned into blank slates. They do things for the action and for the narrative to push forward, but Finn just keeps yelling out stuff. Poe just makes a lot of jokes, and Rose is like back at the base, is like, oh, we're gonna help you out, and that's it. It's very empty, a lot of potential, and none of it is fulfilled. All the attention is on Rey and Kylo. That's it. So I'm going to do a few more videos on the Rey-Kylo controversy, as well as the very controversial ending. But yeah, there's not much to analyze with the other characters because they're just all turned into sidekicks. I mean, I think Richard Grant does some interesting things, as well as the Hux character, but it's very disappointing when only the villain or antagonist side gets a better representation. I mean, arguably Hux is the most important character after Rey and Kylo. He's the only one who really does develop and seems to have some interesting things going on. Alright, this does it for the major characters, at least for the protagonist side, for Rise of Skywalker.